We must ask ourselves, has America unwittingly relinquished its place as guardian of human rights and the beacon of justice? Do we now agree that our unique form of justice, based on the concepts of fairness, honor, and the unwavering conviction that America is better than its enemies, should no longer govern our intelligence agencies? This has now been clearly called into question. On the morning of September 11th, at the green field next to the burning Pentagon, I was a witness to one of the greatest displays of heroism in our history. American men and women, both military and civilian, repeatedly and selflessly risked their lives to save those around them. At the same time, hundreds of American citizens gave their lives to save thousands in both Washington, D.C. and New York City. It was a painful day for all of us. But does the ultimate goal of protecting America require us to adopt policies that shift our mindset from righteous self-defense to covert cruelty? Does protecting America at all costs mean sacrificing the Constitution, our laws, and the Bill of Rights in order to save it? I do not believe that. The attacks of September 11th were horrific, but they did not give us the right to destroy our moral fabric as a nation or to reverse a course that for 200 years led the world towards democracy, prosperity, and guaranteed the rights of billions to live in peace.
Instead of Senator Schumer, I'm going to involve one of my heroes, Alan Dershowitz. Now, I say that, and he's a fine man, but he certainly is confused in many cases, in my opinion. But he does have some questions that he asked. He's with Harvard Law School, and he wrote these questions in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. And here's what he wrote about those who would oppose confirming Judge McCasey's because of his unwillingness to support an absolute prohibition on waterboarding. He said such people should be asked the direct question. And this is the question I ask you, and I hope each one of you, there's three of them, I hope you'll kind of make a note and give us your response. Would you authorize the use of waterboarding, and these are his questions, or other non-lethal forms of torture if you believe that it was the only possible way of saving the lives of hundreds of Americans in a situation? That's one question. He also asked, would you want your president to authorize extraordinary means of interrogation in such a situation? And if so, what means can we use? And finally, Professor Dershowitz asked, if not, would you be prepared? And this is a hard one for any of us, and I'm not trying to be, make you trap you here, but if you're not, would you be prepared to accept responsibility for the preventable deaths of hundreds of Americans? And that's the challenge that I'm having here. So, Colonel Kleinman, I picked on you a lot here, so please go, sir.
No, sir. You're asking very penetrating questions, and I appreciate it. And if I can't answer them to your satisfaction, then I've made an error. I think Mr. Dershowitz's questions have done nothing more than cloud the issue further, and it reflects his lack of understanding of the intelligence process behind it. Number one, there's a lot of ifs, there's a lot of whens. Human intelligence, you look back, for instance, in the Vietnam War, we had Viet Cong who were alleged Viet Cong. How were they alleged Viet Cong? Because another rice farmer pointed them out, who happened to be a competitor in the rice market. There's cases if they knew that where a nuclear device was, or if we could get the information and save thousands of lives and so forth. Interrogation, like intelligence writ large, is a very imprecise process. Going back to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, what is reported in the papers, the things that you've enumerated, but also allegedly that he personally killed, tragically, the journalist Daniel Pearl, which evidence suggests that he was nowhere near the area at the time. So one, as an intelligence officer, I have to ask, well, if he gave me these 5 bits of information which are consistent with what we want to be true, and he's given us 2 or 3 that we can prove that are not true, again, as an intelligence officer, I have to wonder about the validity of the whole take, not just, I can't cherry pick. That's the challenge we have.
Colonel, don't you have that situation all the time when you have someone in a prison saying, you just come in and say, here, have a cup of coffee, let's talk. He's still physically and psychologically and emotionally pressured because he's in prison. It's not a fun place. And he's having to be interviewed here, and if he has no fear of any danger to him, there's still all these elements. And you can't know whether he's telling you the truth then or not either. You can't be sure that that's reliable. So do we do away with all interrogations completely?
Oh, no, sir, not at all. And my statements, the question about how we define torture, that's and literally in a soundbite, I'm unable to address that to my satisfaction, let alone yours. But in terms of using coercive methods, let's say the waterboard, as an interrogator, part of what I'm asked to do is ask questions. I'm evaluating not just the answers I'm getting, but how they're being asked. I'm looking for a baseline of that individual, their behaviors. Do suddenly they exhibit these stereotypies, these grooming behaviors when I ask about activities in one town, but yet the rest of the time they're sitting with their hands folded in front of me. That doesn't indicate that they're deceiving, but you look for these clusters, these groupings of behaviors that makes me have to think, when I get in this area, it's sensitive, and he feels stress, and that stress is manifested in his case certain ways. If his hands are tied, if he's shivering, I don't know if he's shivering because I'm talking about something that's sensitive or because it's 45 degrees in the cell. It takes away a lot of my tools, a lot of my strategies as an interrogator when I use those coercive means. And plus, again, as an interrogator, I'm an intelligence interrogator. I don't want to make them talk, because the question we have to keep asking ourselves, talk about what? I want them to tell me not truth in the sense of what I believe is true, but what is really true. What is causing the insurgency? Why did they attack in 9/11? What other attacks may be coming? And a recruitment model, which really informs my approach, I have seen as far more successful. I was sharing my colleague on my left an example where I had an Iraqi general who, through developing a very profound rapport, answered all the questions I had in the areas that I thought he knew about. As I put my papers together, ending the evening, I asked, as a good interrogator, is there anything else that you know that I haven't asked about? And he asked, do you want to know where the Scud missiles are? At that point was a highly critical item, but we, based on his background, would never suspect that he would know it. Had I used coercion, had I threatened him, he would see, oh, the session is finally over. Do you know anything more? Absolutely not. Instead, we had that, and I was able to go further.
No, I understand.